Okay, you guys are saying there's rumors that Microsoft is going to buy out Valve. Okay, where did this actually come from? Where does anyone know in chat where the rumor actually came from? Because for one, I don't really buy it at the outset, just knee jerk. I don't know. It seems like the only thing I can find is from Dior, Capital Markets, Video Games, and Law on Twitter. And the source is a picture that is just of Gabe sitting on a couch with a Steam Deck. And it says, with approximately 80 billion CCE, Microsoft is preparing an offer of 16 billion for Valve. No stock, all cash. I was just inquiring about deadlock and if it would impact how much other companies would be going for Valve this summer. That number seems too high to be leaked. That should pump Microsoft in any way. I think this is true. Plus the analyst isn't even allowed to own Microsoft. Does anyone know? Is it an actual analyst? I mean, this goes back to something in a leaked email. This goes back to like late 2023. Microsoft would buy Valve, quote, if opportunity arises, said Phil Spencer in leaked email. The opportunity arises? This was leaked in an email. One of the documents is a 2020 email from Xbox chief Phil Spencer via The Verge, in which he said that Nintendo was the most desirable company Microsoft could acquire. Dude, can you imagine Microsoft buying Nintendo? Jesus. Tucked into the end of that email is a comment that Microsoft's board of directors has seen the full write-up on Nintendo and Valve and is fully supportive on either if opportunity arises. So Microsoft, how this would work, in order to spend billions of dollars, that's not really a Phil decision. That is a board of directors decision. So the board of directors would have to go in there and provide approval to do that. Here we go. These are the people that would decide if that happens. These are the people. Reed, partner with Greylock Partners. Hugh Johnston, Senior Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, the Walt Disney Company. Head honcho at Disney is involved with it. Gap Inc., former Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer with Gap. Chief Executive Officer of Engie. Chief Financial Officer of Citi. Of course, Satya, the CEO and Chairman. Sandra, Lead Independent Director. Penny Pritzker, the Chairman and Founder of PSP Partners. Carlos Rodriguez, former Chief Executive Officer, ADP Inc. Charles Charles W. Scharf, CEO and President, Wells Fargo. And then John Stanton, Chairman of Trilogy Partnerships, and Emma Walmsley, CEO of GSK. These are the people that would approve of that. So these are the people that are in charge of Microsoft that would approve an acquisition of, like, in one case, Activision Blizzard, King. These are the guys that voted to approve that and spend $70 billion on it. And then if they were to acquire a Valve or Nintendo, they would also have to vote on that. So what's happened is that Phil and his team have produced, as you can see in the email, they have supported write-ups, basically, or produced write-ups to justify the acquisition of a company like Nintendo. So they write in a big document the argument for buying them and say, oh, if we bought Nintendo, we'd have access to all of these major franchises. We would have access to the Switch, which is a hardware king, and we would have access to all of that. So we'd be able to immediately be one of the top competitors in terms of hardware. Forget the Xbox. Now the Switch is part of Xbox, basically. It would be crazy. Or technically, it would be probably under Microsoft, but it would still be Nintendo, and they'd keep Xbox and Nintendo totally separate. And with Valve, they would now own the biggest distributor of gaming software on PC. And that would be, their bread and butter. All of a sudden, that would be a cash cow for them. So they have pitched all of this. And you can see in this email from the FTC hearings, Takeshi, I totally agree that Nintendo is the prime asset for us in gaming, and today gaming is our most likely path to consumer relevance. I've had numerous conversations with the LT of Nintendo about tighter collaboration and feel like if any US company would have a chance with Nintendo, we are probably the best option. The unfortunate, or fortunate for Nintendo, situation is that Nintendo is sitting on a big pile of cash. They have a board of directors that recently until recently has not pushed for further increases in market growth or stock appreciation. I say until recently, as our former Microsoft Board of Directors member ValueAct has been heavily acquiring shares of Nintendo. And I've kept in touch with Mason Morfitt as he's been acquiring. It's likely he will be pushing for more from Nintendo stock, which could create opportunities for us. Without that catalyst, I don't see an angle to a near-term mutually agreeable merger of Nintendo and Microsoft, and I don't think a hostile action would be a good move. So we are playing the long game, but our board of directors has seen the full write-up on Nintendo and Valve, and they're fully supportive on either if the opportunity arises, as am I. Little translation from corporate speak. So a former Board of Directors member, ValueAct, has been heavily acquiring shares of Nintendo. And Mason Morfitt, as he's been acquiring, has kept in direct contact with Phil Spencer. Their goal is to basically have somebody go in, and this is granted 4 years old, so they're playing the very, very long game. But if you have Nintendo over here, Nintendo, and then you have the monstrosity that is Microsoft over here. Microsoft. Yay. There's a little bit of crossover. You would think it would be totally independent because one is like a Japanese company and one is an American company, and that's mostly true. But they have some holders or stockholders that are shared. So if they have somebody that owns a chunk of Microsoft, that person can also go over and buy a chunk of Nintendo. And their mutually beneficial goal, what would be best for them, since they hold a little chunk of Nintendo and a chunk of Microsoft, what would be best for them is if Microsoft bought Nintendo. So they make this cut a little bit bigger, and then they make it a little bit bigger. And each time it gets bigger, they have more of a say. They have more power, and they can push Nintendo's board of directors, of which they may eventually be a member, and they can push them to pressure into selling to Microsoft or being open to acquisitions. And this is like a little loophole in corporate law in the US, because you might think about that and be like, that seems like very underhanded and sneaky, that basically an agent for a company like Microsoft could go in there and take cuts of Nintendo and then use that to leverage Nintendo and force them into a position where they're selling to Microsoft or merging or something. But that's just how it works. Like, this guy is an independent party. In this case, if we just say that his name is, Mason Morfitt, as you see down there, if this is just Mason, he's just some dude that owns a cut of Microsoft and owns a cut of Nintendo. And of course, he's going to tell them, yeah, I'd love it if you sold here. I win-win with that. Not only will I get paid out when Nintendo sells, because they'll pay bigger than, the market price, but also Microsoft will become stronger as a company, and my cut that I own right here just became more valuable. So boom, I win-win. So Mason is going to keep pushing for that. And it's not just Mason, it's big corporations of institutional investors. It's groups that come in and they might buy another chunk. And then these guys come in and buy a chunk, and these guys come in and buy a chunk, and then these guys come in and buy a chunk. And it can take a decade to happen. But eventually Nintendo will look up and be like, holy crap, 40% of our stock is owned by these institutions that all want us to sell to Microsoft. Oh God. My stance on all of this is I think this would be horrible for the gaming industry. Do not get it twisted. I did not like the Microsoft, Blizzard, Activision, King acquisition. I did not like the merger of those companies. I thought it was largely bad for the industry. There's a situation in which you could see it being good, where Microsoft comes in and takes these really greedy companies and it's like, yeah, now you're owned by a $3 trillion company. So you don't have to be that greedy, just make good games. That's technically possible, but we have no reason to believe that will happen, okay? If it does, awesome. But that, at this point, is just wishful thinking. If Microsoft were to buy Valve, they would then have pretty damn close to a monopoly on all PC gaming. Not only do you need largely Microsoft as a platform with Windows, but Luke, you can play on Linux. Yeah, 35 people can. Okay, more than 35 people, but 99.9 whatever % of people are probably playing on Windows computers. So they have that cut. And then they also have the cut in the form of owning Valve. It would be disastrous. It would be terrible. I don't like giving any one party that much power. And Valve, I think, has done a pretty good job of having consumer interests at heart. And so I think that that's good to keep them independent. Buying Nintendo, I think, is just, it could be very bad. Could be very bad. Not only could it suck the soul out of Nintendo. At this point, I don't think anybody has a lot of confidence in Microsoft's ability to run a platform. And Nintendo, part of what makes them such a unique company within the gaming space is how they run their platform, how they run their business, and how they keep their ecosystem intact. And I just don't see this ending well. Now, they've said that they're interested in doing it. We all know that they're interested in doing it. The difference is Valve is privately held, so it's not like, you know, it's founded by Mike Harrington, Gabe Newell. It's not publicly traded or anything. It's run by a private organization, and they don't need to go out and like listen to a board of directors or anything. If Gabe wants to keep control of it, he can keep control of it. The one situation where I could see this potentially changing is if Gabe wants to do what like Robert Altman wanted to do when he owned ZeniMax. And if he's just like, hey, I want to bail and I want to just go buy a super giga yacht and I'm going to go sail around the Mediterranean with Jeff Bezos and we're going to just rock and roll. Then maybe. We've seen when somebody founds a company and they get to that age where they just want to like leave the busy work and they just want to retire, they can sometimes do things they wouldn't otherwise do, such as selling their company to a buyer that might be bad for the industry, but at least they're getting out with their payday. And I mean, it's possible that even happened with Ninja Theory, speaking of Hellblade, where the founders got paid out when Microsoft bought them back in 2018, and then they released a giga flop of a live service game, and now Hellblade 2, but most of them have left, and you know, now Tamim's gone and they got their check and bailed. So it's possible something similar happens with Gabe, but I don't really see that happening. Gabe seems to be somebody who is perfectly fine with how many billions of dollars he has now. I don't think he needs to go off and sell out to Microsoft. You know, he's got plenty of cash. Plenty of cash, no doubt about it. I know there's rumors going around, but even if they offer 16 billion, that doesn't mean that Valve will sell, okay? Just like if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I want to buy your shirt off of your back right now. I'll pay 50 bucks for it. Might be worth more than, or it might be worth less than 50 bucks. That might be a really good offer, but that still doesn't mean that you're going to take it. You know, you're like, bro, I'm at a funeral. Stop. It's like, it's a good offer though. So just because somebody offers you money for something does not mean that anything will actually come from it. All of this to say, I think it would be disastrous for the industry if Microsoft were to buy Valve or Nintendo. I mean, I would not be happy with either of those. I think that would be very bad.